On this episode of League Legends, we're joined by a two-time Clive Churchill medalist. A dual premiership winner with the Raiders, Bradley Clyde was inducted into the Hall of Fame in 2008. He represented New South Wales on 12 occasions and played for the Kangaroos 21 times.
Bradley Clyde, welcome to League Legends. Pleasure to have you.
Thank you, Jay. Yeah, great to be here.
I want to talk about your career in rugby league, obviously, but you also had a great affinity for AFL growing up in the River Arena as a young fella. Tell me about that.
Oh, the AFL down in the River Arena is very strong, and at the time, I just loved all sport. I was having a crack at pretty much all sport, but the AFL I quite enjoyed. My father played. He was a shearer during the day, played AFL on a Saturday and then rugby league on a Sunday. So as a consequence, I started playing rugby league as well. Soon, from the age of 7, I started AFL at sort of 4 or 5 and couldn't get enough of sport.
Why did you take the rugby league path over the AFL when you got into your teenage years?
The Raiders come into the competition in 1982 and I had a tangible pathway at that point. I think I was probably enjoying the game a little bit more than the AFL, although I did love my AFL at the time. But and the game in Canberra was probably more organised. So I chose rugby league. It was a tough decision. I was about 15. Mum decided that I needed to choose one or the other. She's sick of running me around. So I ran with rugby league and focused on becoming a Raider.
When you talk about that tangible pathway, you saw that for yourself, considering you were on the cusp of probably playing Australian schoolboys at that time and played a couple of years of it as well.
That's right. At the age of 15, I made the Australian schoolboys, and that was... that connected me with a potential career that maybe I can do this at the highest level if I really apply myself, and so that's what I set about doing. So it was about 15. I signed on with the Canberra Raiders with a scholarship at that point, and things started to happen for me. So, it was... I felt though I'd made the right decision.
When you came into the Raiders system, obviously a great system with some great players, what was your first experience with someone like Mal Meninga who was there?
I had the luxury of coming into the Raiders at 17. Wayne Bennett was the coach and invited me to come and train every Tuesday with first grade. I thought it was the greatest thing ever. The moment I set foot into the dressing room, you know, had the likes of Mal Meninga and Gary Belcher. Peter Jackson was really influential with the club, and his contribution should never be understated. There was Dean Lance, Gary Coyne. Some of these older players, Ashley Gilbert, had a big influence on culture. So the likes of myself, Laurie Daly, Glenn Lazarus, Ricky Stewart, we were learning our trade, and so I'm sure at the time they didn't realise that they were being so influential, but we would watch the way they walked, the way they talked, the way they obviously played, but committed themselves to training and committed themselves to winning. So, yeah, it was a really a great time. That was 1987. I started training with him. 88, I played my first game.
You mentioned Wayne Bennett. What was he like? Well, we're talking 30 years ago now, compared to the Wayne you probably see today. What was he like as a coach then?
Back then, I was only 17, but he taught me something that has stayed with me for my whole career, and that was just having if you set yourself a goal, having a no excuses approach to achieving that goal. And Wayne set a real framework of success in the couple of years he was at the Raiders, and every player that he coached during that time will tell you that was a real catalyst. Himself and Don Ferner was a real catalyst of change for a platform of success.
You all came in very young, very early in 1988. By 89, you're in a grand final.
Life, one of the best days of my life, the 89 grand final. And in 1 year, it all happened quite quickly. So 89 for me, I look back and some of the players that I got to play with, I learnt a lot from. I'd had their football cards only a couple of years earlier and getting them signed, you know, so absolute sports tragic. And to be able to play with them and against them, it was really nice.
It was and still is considered one of the great grand finals of all time. But what's your recollection of that day? What moment, apart from winning it, but stands out in that game that took so many turns?
Yeah. I remember going into the game and thinking that it was going to be part of history no matter what, whether we win or lose. And I thought that was fantastic. But we walked in at half-time and we all felt that we were the better team, although the scoreboard didn't indicate that. And Tim Sheens made that known in the dressing room. We all looked at each other and went, well, the 2 weeks after of partying was a young man's dream.
You're only 19 years of age at the time. You were awarded the Clive Churchill Medal. What was it like?
Privileged to be in the team and to create history for Canberra, the Canberra Raiders, and then to be named the best player on the field. Yeah, it was a really good time. We were all young blokes just navigating our way to be professional rugby league players, and had a real bond that we're all the local juniors were learning from such experience.
Was the pinnacle 1990, another great year for the club, but for yourself on a personal level, really tough. The ACL injury late in the year, you missed the finals, you missed the grand final. At the time, what was your emotions and how do you look back on it now?
Yeah, I look back now and think rugby league, a career in rugby league is a roller coaster, but it is meant to shape you as a person. You're meant to learn from each of the experiences, and this was one occasion. I remembered the moment Dr. Merv Cross told me that my knee needed an ACL operation and consequently I'd be out for the rest of the year. I shed a tear. Here I was, sort of 19, 20, and it was a moment that meant that
I ask you this then, in 91, what's worse, playing in a grand final and losing in 91 or winning in 1990 but not playing? How does the two compare?
Yeah, it's a good question. I've always approached grand finals in a way that you're either the first or the second best team, and both of them you should be very proud of. So the loss I wasn't so much so distraught with. I hate losing it, and my kids will vouch that I hate losing anything, but I understand losing. I don't like it, but I understand it, and you need to digest it. The 1990 winning, the fact that I couldn't be a part of that, couldn't really compete, that competition and standing there in the arena knowing that you'd given your best and either won or lost, I think is part of that experience.
So even though when you lost in 91, you can at least have that satisfaction that you're out there and you had that go.
That's exactly right. Yes, yeah. In 90, I didn't have that, where in 91, I stood in the middle of the...
When you heard your name read out that time, what was your reaction?
Well, I didn't quite hear it at first, and then I got tapped on the shoulder and said that you've got the Clive Churchill Medal, which I thought was a massive honour and a...
So much sentiment around the team with Mal Meninga retiring, but for yourself, having won a grand final, then missed a grand final, then lost a grand final, what was the personal drive like to get back there and win another one?
Well, the motivation to win for Mal was massive, and it was apparent all year. But I look at that 94 team and there was a real change. There was a lot of young players coming through. They were changing the game. There was Brett Mullins, for instance. There was David Ferner, Jason Croker, David Boyle, all of these young guys, as well as you had Mal Meninga and those more the established stars. There was Laurie and myself. I know there was a bit of a shift for me. I was a reluctant leader, but I understood that I had to provide some leadership. So my behaviours need to be according, so to teach all these young guys how to win football games. I thought we did that quite well. Some of those players that I mentioned transformed into magnificent players. But a key element of our win in '94 was Johnny Lomax and Quentin Pongia. Our two front rowers, they really provided that bookends, that platform for us to be able to attack in football games because of their strong defence and what they did in attack. So it was quite a different football team, just as talented as '89, but there was a lot of new faces with the core showing the way.
'95 in the Super League, there was a big money, big lucrative offer to get you away from the Raiders to come to the Roosters, and the Packers were involved. Tell me about that experience.
Going to see Kerry Packer, and it was... I'd walked into the office to see Kerry, and he was just finished 2 weeks out of a quadruple heart bypass and having a cigarette, as you could do if you owned the building. And
after his quadruple
inside,
heart bypass.
Yes. Didn't deter him too much. But he made it known that he wanted me to play with the Roosters, but he was a South supporter, and that his son had aligned himself with the Roosters, and he would support that. That meeting for me was a moment where I sort of had to make a decision, and I just really enjoyed playing rugby league with my mates. And they were at the Canberra Raiders. And the Canberra Raiders, as a consequence, as a club, was aligning themselves to Super League. So that's what I did a number of weeks later. I signed on for the Canberra Raiders with Super League. Yeah, a really interesting time. If we had our time again, I don't know whether the same decisions would be made. I would certainly hope that the decision would be made not to impact the game in a detrimental way. I think those decisions could be made in the boardroom as opposed to impacting at player level.
Because you were so loyal to the Raiders in that time, and then fast forward a couple of years, '99, and your services no longer needed with Ricky because of the salary cap. How difficult was that, considering how you stuck with the club through those times?
Yeah, it was hugely difficult. I was a local junior. I was a Canberran. I certainly made plans and pictured myself living in Canberra for the rest of my life. As we know, things don't always go according to plan, and that there was an event where the Raiders, due to salary cap restrictions, that was the excuse that I was given, that I was to move on and find another club. And so I went about doing that. My preference would have been to stay at Canberra, but I believe in fate. Things happen for a reason, and so I went about moving my family to Sydney, and that was in the end of '98, in preparation for the '99 season. I signed with the Bulldogs with Ricky, and really enjoyed it. It was a completely different experience, different culture, but just as healthy as what I experienced at Canberra.
When you look back on your career, is it a regret that you're not a one-club player? A lot of guys pride themselves on that. Yeah.
I mean, I don't have many regrets, but that's probably one of them. I value that. I value the loyalty. The salary cap structure probably doesn't allow for that as much as what it once did. But, I really respect that one-club player.
Let's talk about State of Origin. Got to play in some great sides under Laurie Daly, who led that New South Wales side through that period in the early 90s. In 95, Laurie, yourself, guys that were in the Super League weren't allowed to play State of Origin. How did that sit with you?
It was a really interesting time, and it didn't surprise us that we wouldn't be picked. There was court cases around left, right and centre that we understood the environment, and really disappointed we couldn't put on the boots for the state that year. So in effect, there was a couple of years that we didn't get picked, and then Super League kicked off in 97 with its own competition and come back together in 98.
After missing out in 95 Origin because of the Super League, you don't then get another chance to play State of Origin in a combined competition until 99. Did that 95 year hurt your kind of representative hopes moving forward?
I look back and, yes, so 95, it did hamper my representative career. It's the ultimate game, or one of the ultimate games every year to play State of Origin, to pull on that sky blue jersey is really important. But, it certainly hampered my career at the time.
You get recalled in 99, and then, of course, there's the infamous horse riding incident. What's your, I guess, recollection of what happened on that day?
Well, I wish that it didn't happen because I was enjoying my rugby league at that in 99 for the Bulldogs, and we were winning a lot of football games, and I felt as though I was on top of my game and could offer something at that level. The horse riding was introduced on the back of the bonding sessions. That was an option other than sitting in a bar and having a beer and to bring the team together. I didn't necessarily agree with it, but everyone said, "Yep, let's do this." But I jumped on a horse called Apples. I was the last out from lunch, so I got the nag that really didn't want to be ridden that day. And that horse fought me the whole way, and then all the other horses got spooked and took off. So consequently, mine did as well, and I lost a stirrup straight away, and I was getting dragged along for about 20 metres. So in effect, I damaged my shoulder capsule and out for 8 weeks, but I guess looking back, it could have been worse.
Let's talk about tests and playing for the Kangaroos. You said you were hugely patriotic. So what did it mean to pull on the green and gold when you first got your opportunity in 89?
For me, it was everything. Representing your country, I've always held in such high regard, and seeing the Olympics and growing up with so many sporting moments that you're so proud of, the America's Cup, even watching Australians do great things in the sporting arena, and I had the opportunity to do that. For me, it was an absolute privilege. So I wanted to make every time I played for Australia something worthwhile, that I didn't leave anything in the bag. And I remember some of the moments playing on the greatest arenas, Wembley, Old Trafford. I played right throughout New Zealand with that 89 tour. Was an amazing 3-week tour, and changed my life from then on. Playing for Australia was everything for me, and loved every moment. I got to play with the best. I got to play with the king, Wally Lewis, in 89. I got to play alongside the Queenslanders that I played against. Dale Shearer was one of the most talented players I've ever got to play with. Fatty Vaughton was at the end of his career, but I can say that I played alongside these guys and went on tour for 3 weeks with them. Kangaroo tours are an event that I often find myself talking about as well. So, yeah, the program of playing for your country was really amazing.
You won a World Cup in '92, but a bit of a bittersweet moment at the end as well, because you picked up another shoulder injury, didn't you?
Yes, yeah. That's. I mentioned the fortunes of rugby league and that roller coaster. Being a part of that World Cup success was wonderful, but a shoulder injury at Wembley wasn't the best. And then Wembley again in '94, I remember getting collared by Sean Edwards in the first test. So Wembley didn't quite treat me the way I wanted it to.
What about playing in England once you finished up at the Bulldogs and the opportunity to go over and play for Leeds? What was that like?
It was a wonderful experience, and Leeds itself really enjoyed the culture of Northern England, and living abroad, having done that with a young family. I had my 2 daughters and wife at the time. A wonderful experience. The Leeds Rhinos at the time were still finding their feet as a premiership team. They had been successful for making the top 4 regularly, but needed to transform to be better than that. And I know I worked with Gary Hetherington, the owner, to help change that culture to be better, and I feel as though I had an impact. I signed a 2-year contract and then played only 1 year, just given I hurt my Achilles at the time. It was time to start a new life and different challenges.
How does Bradley Clyde want to be remembered as a rugby league player and as a teammate for what you contributed on the field?
Yeah, that's a good question. I always wanted to be considered as someone that turned up and did his best every week. I always wanted to be considered as honest and with integrity, that applied my skill as a rugby league player, that added value to the team at every opportunity. So, look, I had a wonderful time. It was a magic carpet ride for me, to be fair. I'm still living the dream. I'm still getting a massive amount out of rugby league because it's given me so much. I'm trying to give back a little bit through Men of League, being a director. I'm very grateful for the opportunity that I had playing rugby league.
Bradley Clyde, you had a wonderful career. Thank you so much for chatting to us on League Legends.
Thank you, Jake.
This has been a Fox Sports production.